Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 15th episode of Women of Color and Confidence. My name is Amber Rose West. I am your host, and today I am joined by Angela Calvin. I'm really excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking about pivoting in careers and in the later years in your life, especially anytime you want to be pivoting in your career to something that's a little bit more fulfilling and a little bit more happy. I've known Angela for so many years since my time back in San Diego. And we were just talking about how I was nudging her to get on this show. She's a very inspirational woman. I'm super excited to be having this conversation with her. Angela, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. Would you like to take a second to introduce yourself to all of our listeners?
Yes. So as you know, my name is Angela, and I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. I moved here from San Diego. I lived in San Diego for about 18 years. And my wife and I just moved to Atlanta like about 2 years ago now. We've almost been here. My family lives here. And so, yeah, that's kind of pretty much it. We moved here to start a whole new life and to, be close to family. And, we're enjoying it. Outside of the pandemic, of course, kind of took a toll, but
Yeah.
Was
that a bit of a culture shock from California to Georgia?
Oh, yeah. Yes. It was a good culture shock. I mean, it takes an adjustment. We still have conversations like driving around and like, oh, wait, someone looks like me here, driving and over here and everywhere we go. It's just really like strange to be surrounded. It definitely is a shock after 18 years. So you see yourself everywhere. It's a beautiful thing though.
Yeah. I can imagine it. So it sounds really nice. I've never been to Georgia. The South scares me just a little bit, but it's definitely it's been on my to-do list. I have been to New Orleans for a conference. Yeah, but that's as far as I've gone, but I've heard great things and I'm excited to visit. So I'm super stoked about this conversation. And I actually want to start off with, we do talk a lot about self-confidence on this show, especially being Black women. And when I asked you your definition of self-confidence, I was lit up from the inside out. So I wanted to share it with everybody and just kind of get a little deeper into it with you sitting here. So I asked you, what does self-confidence look and feel like to you? And you said, I think that confidence for me is being able to acknowledge, embrace, and sit in both my successes and shortcomings as a human being. In my opinion, we often think that confidence is the absence of self-doubt. I believe we always carry duality, and this duality serves its purpose when needed. I'm getting chills just like reading this. Like, please tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I thought about it a lot. I think the best thing I can say and the best way I can explain is, for a while, I've spent a lot of time like listening to podcasts, especially for Black women. We've been coming up, we've been doing so much. It's been inspiring. They've been super successful. And, there's a lot of podcasts and with groups and things like that. And I feel really inspired. But yet I would find myself feeling really discouraged at the same time, because I would feel like this is amazing, but like, where do I fit in here? I would find myself comparing. I would feel like, when am I going to ever get there? Looking at I would look where I'm at and be like, have a lot of doubt about that and feel really ashamed about embracing that doubt, that self-doubt about myself, and feeling like I had to hide it, because so often we feel like we have to kind of be face forward of being confident and being these things. And so I feel really ashamed about it. And so I would have this really conflicted feeling. And then I think in the recent, I just started being like, I need to embrace that. I need to be present with the fact that like, that's a part of me. It's informed me, right? It's like having light and dark. There's no light without dark, right? And we, have to come from somewhere. And it's being able to like look back and see, look at things and be like, okay, I've come from that place, and look at where I'm at now and saying like, I did that, right? And not being ashamed to embrace that, because it is human and we have to embrace all those pieces of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I really started to notice that about myself, that I was just kind of like leaving that aside. But this has been a big part of like me really growing.
Yeah,
So, that's what I feel, we have to embrace all of that.
that's
So,
really beautiful. And I it's so interesting. When I work with, clients and students who talk a lot about like self-doubt and comparison, they always put it in this perspective of like, I have this and I don't want to have this anymore. And, part of my work with them is no, 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 you need those things. Those things are good for you. They're healthy for you, not to be
mhm,
stuck in them, but to understand, why do I feel this self-doubt right now? And
mhm,
where is this comparison not serving me or whatever it is I'm comparing myself to? And how do we move through those feelings to feel other more empowering things? I feel
mhm.
when it comes to self-doubt, I feel like the strongest thing that you can do is make a decision, because doubt is usually like, I don't know, why am I here, what's going on? And I'm like,
Right,
ooh, most empowering thing you could do is make a decision, and it doesn't need to be a big huge one. It could be something so little small, but just
right,
make one and see how it feels. And understanding that, I really like what you said about not being ashamed of where I am compared to where I should be, right? We have these
right,
expectations that we put on ourselves. I should be
mhm,
there, over there already. And then,
right,
part of what's really great is being able to stop and say, well, where was I like a year ago or 2 years ago? And like,
right,
was I beating myself up that I wasn't where I am right here, right now? No, I was probably beating myself up that I wasn't over there. When you get there,
right,
you know?
right, right, yeah, yeah.
Well, speaking of, you were saying that you were listening to, not to put you on the spot or anything, but do you have particular authors or podcasts and things that you listen to on the regular that bring up your self-confidence?
I constantly listen to podcasts. That's like my thing. Between podcasts and Audible, I'm always listening to something. So I listen to tons. So I listen to a lot of tech podcasts, like Tech-ish, Black Tech, Green Money. I listen to Shaping the Shift. I listen to like Black Girl Own. I listen to various things that I feel like fill me up. I
Uh-huh.
I pick like little things that I want to feel inspired about. I want to know more. So I'm really into tech and I want to see what's coming up. I listen to things that are, going to be like self-empowering as far as taking care of ourselves, emotionally, spiritually. And then travel. I love travel. So listen to Black Sit and Black Broad Abroad is called.
Uh-huh.
And then of course I listen to like Pod Save the People and Code Switch for politics and things like that. So but the more inspiring, yeah, like Shape and Shift and all those are really great ones. And some of the tech ones, because, like I said, we're just doing great things. And I love hearing the come up stories. So
Yes,
those are like things I listen to, yeah.
I love come up stories too, and I love hearing different people's perspectives on things. You had mentioned about like finding your voice and self-advocating, as a Black woman, as a Black queer woman. What has that
Mhm.
journey been like for you? And I would love to hear like if there is any difference in that self-discovery from a place like California to a place like Georgia.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like I spend a lot of time not really advocating in that way for myself. I think especially I think I see it more in like my job journey. And
Mhm.
that's really big for me. I think that has been the place that I've really struggled the most for me, and really like creating a voice for myself. And I think like for a long time I just really didn't have a voice to advocate for myself, professionally, even as a person, about where I stood. And I think over the years, I just started to find more my voice. I've always known. Of course, I live in my skin. I'm a Black woman. You're always kind of moving through those spaces all the time. We're always reminded who we are, right? We always have to live in that and be in that. And so, but I think that we sort of compartmentalize it and we kind of work through it in our own spaces, whether it's a work or our social circles or things like that.
Mhm.
And I think over a period of time, I just started to really become more confident in myself about who I was as a Black woman. And I think more recently too, especially I think coming out of my last situation, my last job, it was like, you know, it was hard. It was hard with everything that happened throughout the last year, and having to be like understand that I'm present and that who I am and what I have to bring to the table. And being confident about that, and but it has changed. I think uh, living in San Diego has been very different, but I think coming out here was really great. Gave me a lot of confidence, I think. Again, to see myself out here and uh, to feel embraced out here about being out here, because I think it's easy. It was easy to get really lost there in San Diego a little bit.
Mhm.
And then coming here and just feeling like, okay, here we are, we're showing up, and feeling really encouraged by it.
Mhm.
And so I feel like, yeah, I feel like I just learned to be more vocal, and more comfortable in my skin about who I am, and yeah, yeah, it's been great. It's been a great journey, you
Good.
know?
It's really interesting that you say like being in San Diego, you feel lost a little bit. And I I
Mhm.
get that sense and that energy from Black women that I talk to in their career industries, if they're like the only Black woman or one of the few people of color that work in their companies, that's something that
Mhm.
happens to them at work, when they are, it's one thing I think to like pick a city to live in and like you look around, you're like, there's not a lot of people here like me. But then in a work environment where there are people that choose all the people that are sitting in the room together, and then feeling like I feel a little lost because
Right.
there isn't anybody here like me. And then when things in our work environments come up that are inappropriate or make us uncomfortable, it's like I am the only one here, so I really have to be on my
Right.
toes about like what I say and how I respond. And then, it's true what you said. Like you have to take that back to a place that's safe and like detangle it, process it, analyze it, and then be like, and then compartmentalize it. Like, okay, well, this just stays here now because I can't really take it back to work and I can't really like talk about it with other people.
Right.
It's really interesting.
Mhm.
And I feel like that has to do too with or that um what's the word I'm looking for? It's like right on the tip of my tongue. It also not impacts, but it is impacted. I don't know if that's right
Uh-huh.
either. It's one of the I'm like, I know I like have it also influences us as women when with all of the hats that we have to wear, right? Like we have to
Right.
put on our hat to
Mhm.
go to work and then, be the not angry, not opinionated Black woman at work because,
Right.
we can't be seen as that. And then we have to go outside and we have to wear our hat of like, I'm strong and don't mess with me while I'm walking down the street and stop talking to me. And then we have to
Right.
wear this hat to go over here. And I feel like that also is a part of our of the world compartmentalizing us into these little boxes so that
Yeah.
like they all feel safe and good while we're over here like working to put the ourselves in all these different boxes with all these different hats and all these
Right.
different rules. And it's like uh
Exhausting. It's really exhausting. It's very exhausting. It's all of the, we do all of the code switching and just having to be, nice and how do you say things and it's hard. It's really exhausting. We don't get to show up to work and just be there because we want to do our work.
mhm,
We just want to do it. We want to come in like everybody else. We want to do our work, but we constantly, it's hard. I used to feel like going into jobs, it's like I have to put on armor all the time. It's like I can't show up as myself to just come in and just sort of just be me,
mhm,
and you feel like you get pushed into being something that you're not, right?
mhm,
If you're a giving person, you're a jovial person, you're really easygoing. I would start to feel myself just like having to switch. You feel like you're kind of coming out of your skin of who you are,
that it's
right?
like
Because you're getting guarded and you're feeling all these things. And it's like, but that's not how I work. Like
mhm,
that's not how I naturally am in my energy. But I feel
mhm,
like I feel forced that I'm pushed on to carrying out this energy with everybody around me because I feel like I have to. I have to be on my guard. I can't just hang out and trust and have a conversation. You got to guard your life and your personal and all these things. And so it becomes really exhausting to have to like and this is not just work. This is everywhere. And I don't think people
yeah,
understand that we do this all the time. Like
yes,
when we walk into spaces, I don't think people get the concept that we have to walk in as Black women and read the room,
mhm,
right? And be
mhm,
like, we always are aware and present that we are this Black woman in this skin. a Black person walking into a space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that means, and where other people come in and just so comfortable. It's like, oh, I'm coming here to have some food, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and they don't ever think twice about their surroundings, but we think about it all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's and I sit on the intersectionality of three, of being Black, being a woman, and being queer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very interesting to navigate all the time, but we do it.
But we
Yeah.
do it. And it's that's one
Yeah.
of those things that Chloe said on her episode. She was like, but we do it because we have to. If we want to
Right.
be in that space, we have to do it. And that's why it's so important to continue creating safe spaces for Black women to show up where they don't have to put their armor on. And you made a really good point about putting armor on. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, like I'm gonna take this sleeve off, and then your arm showing, and someone's like, your arm showing, and you're like, never mind, I'm gonna go ahead and put that right back on.
Right.
Just kidding. Sorry.
Right.
Got a little too comfortable. My bad. And then like you have to go back into that armor. Um, it's really been an interesting experience to listen to the way that different women in different spaces have different kinds of armor. Some of it is like bodily armor, whether that's just like not being as expressive, or like when I was in high school, I always wore my hair up and back because I just didn't want my hair to be a thing or an issue, like or whether it's verbally, where they don't speak up, or they lower their voice because they don't want to be seen as like the loud Black woman and things like that, and all the different ways that we contort who we are to be allowed or seen as accepted in all these different places. And all the stories, they range the gamut. I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's like so many different ways that we have learned to adapt and assimilate. And I'm like, oh, it blows my mind sometimes.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
So
a lot.
it is a lot. So can we talk a little bit about like I want to talk about work, because work has been a really interesting journey for me as well, where I started and where I ended up and what I'm doing now. What is your like employment journey been like? Have you been at companies where you're the only Black woman? Have you been kind of like, I don't want to say outcast, because I don't know if outcast is the right word, but have you felt like you worked at a company where everyone was just like pushing you away a little bit? And where are you now?
Yeah. I mean, as far as being, I'm always usually probably like the Black woman, or maybe there's a few of us. And I feel like it's like what I said earlier. I feel like the relationships go but so far, right? It's hard sometimes. It's been hard sometimes to relate, to be in the space, to feel safe in the space. Oftentimes, you make some friendships, but it's always, again, I've always tried to figure out, like, who do I trust? Like, how open do I become, and all these different things, and feeling like, very isolated about that. And like, it's like what I said, you just, you want to be you, and you want to like have conversations with your coworkers, trust your boss, right? All these things, but you're always having to think about these different hierarchies and how it affects you, and whether your best interest is in mind. I was thinking about the other day, like, after I left this last job, I was like, it's so interesting when you leave a job, it's like you never talk to people again sometimes, right? You might have something, but it's really interesting how it's all cool when you're there, you kind of talk to people and all those things, and then you realize it stops, and it's like you really never had a connection. You really were there just to do that job, but you never really fit into the cultural fit, so to speak. You were there just to really do the job. And I feel like I've had so many different jobs. I've had so many different jobs over my lifetime, and I've had my uncomfortable spaces where I've just been like, and being assertive, and I'm in my head, I'm going through times where I felt really uncomfortable. I remember being in a position where, and I'm the type of person, when I go into jobs, like if I see things, I'm a process person, I'm like, what can we do to improve something? And I remember being this one job, and I was like, working in a warehouse, and I was fulfilling orders, and I think I thought of a process to make something easier, or something wasn't working. And so they basically went back and said something to my boss. And so, yeah, and it became like a big thing. For a couple of times I was being called into meetings, like, basically it was like, you're just here to like, just do the job, you know? That's it, right? Like, basically don't say nothing else. Like this is the way that it's been, this is the way that it's going. They felt threatened. And so it
Mhm.
was like they went to my boss, and before you knew it, after that, it was like I was done.
Yeah.
I had lost that job. And I
Wow.
feel like that was a place and a time that really, I have always struggled through my career, but that really put a stamp on me. It really silenced me. There are certain parts in your life where you have certain job situations that really impact you and you can remember them very clearly. And it really put a stamp on me. It really had an effect where I was like, be careful what you say. Don't say too much.
Mhm.
Don't be too assertive. Just hold your ideas. And that's how I felt. I feel like I got really penalized for what I thought was something, and I was like, did I say it wrong? Was I offensive? Like what happened?
Right.
And I remember that stuck with me. And I was like, and I remember just being like, now I took that with me into other jobs and was like really guarded about what I shared, about showing, contributing really and
Yeah.
having a voice.
That's so
Because I got really squashed and I was like, wow, this is really, that was really intense for me, you know?
it's really interesting how those things can have such a long-term impact, but also not only did it silence you, but then your what you can bring to the table in terms of value to another company gets kind of put in this envelope and never gets to come out. So, I was talking with Courtney the last episode about when the moment I realized that job interviews you could ask them questions too. Like
Oh
what are
yeah.
what are the skills that
Right.
I'm going to learn at this job? What am I going to take away from my time in this company? Are you open to hearing maybe new processes that could be more efficient and those kinds of things. And, that you were robbed of that from that one place because now it's like, well, I don't want to lose this job. And
Hmm.
I was kind of talking about this when I announced your episode that I felt like this was something that I heard a lot growing up, and especially from the Black people that I was around, was like when you get a job, you don't want to rock the boat at all. That includes like looking for another job or asking for a pay raise or all these things that are really normal about employment. Like if they offer you the
Hmm.
job, you take it, and like you don't
Right.
complain, you don't do this. Like if you don't like the job, it doesn't matter because you want to make sure you're with one company for a long time because it shows that you're trustworthy or you're a great value or something.
Yeah.
And that got me messed up for a long time because then I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
you're basically telling me that I'm not worthy or worth a job that either makes me happy or pays me what I want to be paid.
Right.
And we just
Right.
get stuck in these jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a big topic for me about this whole thing, even like this whole pivot and everything, is that I've always been in jobs that I feel like it's survival mode. I feel like I got to a place of just, I need to take care of myself. I need to put a roof over my head. I need to eat, and so I
Mhm.
would just take whatever that I could, it became administrative. I just became good at administrative work. It was easy to get. And so I always just kind of fell into it, but I was never really happy. But I always lived in a survival mode. I always lived in a scarcity mindset. And so I just kind of like put myself in these like really compromising situations and never really felt fulfilled or happy. And I think we have a lot of, there's a lot of expectations placed on us by whether it's by our peers, whether by our family,
Mhm.
that, and that's funny, that comes up a lot right now. It's like our parents and stuff, like our old school generation sort of, right? They're like, they came up in a time, my wife and I talk about this, where it's like you had the pension and the gold watch, and like you stayed at a place for a long time for a lot of years, right? And that was seen as some type of as character, and you should do that. And so the same advice gets kind of matriculated down to you, where you should do that. Like, it's a job, just take the job, girl, like earn the
Mhm.
money, like,
Mhm.
and it just, everything else is kind of taken out of it. All of the desire and the passion and really trying to figure out what you really want, kind of gets really, really squashed. And so that's kind of how I've been. It's just like, I've just been kind of taking the job and
Mm-hmm.
not really feeling happy, but also feeling fear about, well, what else can I do? Where can I go from here?
Yeah.
And, like you said, it's just, and you don't want to feel irresponsible because you're not taking care, you're not taking this job,
Yeah.
or like I said, and other things, of just like not asking for what you want and just, again, we kind of we get put in those situations where we feel intimidated and we feel like we can't ask like everybody else what we want,
Yeah. Yeah.
or that, like I said, that we don't deserve to ask for those things. We should just take what we have and be grateful for it.
And then
And
be
that's what you always
grateful.
feel. You should feel grateful that you have that. And you
Yeah.
start to think like that, like at least you got a job. Okay, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not the end all be all. And you just feel like you're very beholden to the people that you work for.
Yeah.
And like you feel like you have to be in this indebtedness to that. And it's like some people are very gifted. I have friends that like they're amazing. They jump, boom, boom, boom. They're like, I don't like this amount. And I'm like, wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I like don't even I had never conceived that I could. My wife is the same way. She's like, Angela, why do you think that you feel like you have to stay at the same job forever? Get in the job, you don't like it, leave. And I have this thing. She said, why do you feel loyal? I'm like, oh no, I feel loyal. I feel like I should not be like that.
Yeah.
I feel like, or I'm scared to kind of make that move or things like that. It's like, no, girl, you don't need to feel like that. Do what's best for you. If you
Yeah.
stay there for a little while and you leave and feel everybody else does it, but why do we feel that way? I don't know why. So many lessons. I mean, there's so much to talk about,
Yeah.
when it comes to like this sort of journey, professionally. So,
Excuse me. I feel like you hit it kind of on the head where with this idea of what we were taught was that there's if you're at a job for a certain amount of time, that longevity is a certain part of your character that speaks highly of you to other people
mhm,
or other jobs, right? And I would agree with you. I actually learned that lesson growing up too. Like the longer you're with a job, the more appealing you are to other employers. So if you're only at a job for a year or 2 years, then it's like, oh, and especially if you're a Black woman, then it's like, what kind of trouble did she cause that she
right?
could stay there for like a year or 2 years? So I think
Mhm,
that was a great point that you made, that it's really tied, like our staying with a company is really tied in with how other people perceive our character as women, Black women, and then as employees. But then also that
mhm.
we were not taught to ask the same question. When I learned all of the questions that I could ask before being employed, I was like, does everybody ask these questions, or are you like trying to get me in trouble? Because this
Yeah,
does not sound right. This does not sound like what I learned. And then, there is the idea that if you do ask those questions, and that makes you unfavorable as a candidate
right,
to someone
right,
else, that even if they may ask those freaking questions, it doesn't make them look like an opinionated, kind of bossy Black woman that
right.
you are being in this interview by asking me these questions. And so that there's so much tied into it, when people are like,
Yeah,
well, why don't you just ask the questions? It's like, okay, let me give you the list of reasons why I'm scared to ask these questions. Is it about, are
right,
they going to look at me differently, treat me differently, think my character is differently, put me lower on the list of people that they want to hire? Are they going to lower how much they're going to pay me? Are they, like, all these different things come into play that don't normally come into
right.
play for other people. And that has been a really scary thing. I do think that is generational. And I think that our generation is getting to that point where we're realizing it started at, I do think that it did start with the white people in our generation, where they decided, we're not going to listen to our parents anymore. We're going to start our own
Mhm,
businesses, or we're going to work from home now. And then we were like, can we have some of that too? Like, I don't want the
right.
cream. I want some of that. And so it has kind of become the norm, and we've been able to kind of navigate it in some way. I think in some ways, not as a whole, but that idea
Right.
of, you find a job, you stay a long time, you get your tenure, you get your pension, and then you get out and you have a
Mhm,
retirement. It's like, we are not really doing that anymore. So it looks really different, but in that same boat, it also looks very different for Black women and people of color too. So
Yeah. And I feel like we have to start like, you know, that was one of the hardest things for me. I would struggle with is interviews. I would have the hardest time with them. And I was
just like
just
my
like,
heart
I
beating
was like,
through
I
my
hate them.
freaking chest. Makes me
I
so
mean,
nervous.
I really hated. I was like, what? I was like, what is this? I always felt like it was. I just don't like the process, to be honest. I just feel like it's the same person. It's like another person who's as fallible or more so or equally questioning my validity
Hmm.
about my ability and asking me questions and making me feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It's like, wait a minute, like how does that work? You
Hmm.
know, and I feel like we sit in this really vulnerable place. And I used to hate them because I'd be like, and you know, and like once I got into the job, it was like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
right? I knew I was capable, but it was like that initial of like feeling like I was on this sort of hot spot for people. And you know, I think we do as people in general, but as Black women have to be like, look, I need to be interviewing you. You know, you're
Hmm.
asking me whether I'm a cultural fit. Are you a cultural fit? Because 9 times
Yes.
out of 10, really the question. That's really the question. Are you the cultural fit? And
Yeah.
I think we have to stop being fearful that, and this, I'm saying this to myself, right? Stop
Mhm.
being fearful that if someone's like, I don't like her, she's too aggressive, she's too assertive, then that is not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's not where you're supposed to be at all. Because if someone can't accept that you're asking for what you want and that it doesn't mean something ulterior,
Yeah.
that it's just like, you know, you're asking for because you should,
Yeah.
then that's not where you want to be. Because if it starts there, well, then what's going to happen once you kind of get in the door?
Right. Right.
It's a prelude to what's to come. And then now you got to
Once-
go in and do all this labor,
Yeah. And once they're holding
right?
that paycheck over your head and you're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I
You
should guess
know?
this from the interview. I will say that the last three employment opportunities that I had, my interview, I was like, in my head, I was like, yes, they're going to ask me questions and I'm going to ask them questions. But if this doesn't feel like a conversation, I don't want it. I need to be able to say no, thank you. And even the first
Right.
job I got here in Colorado, it was administrative. It was running an office here, which I have a ton of experience in. And he was like, I really like your resume. I'm interviewing like 7 people, but I really want to talk to you tomorrow. If you can come in early, that'd be great. And I was like, cool. And I like when I showed up, I was like, I just don't know. Like I like Colorado is it's very white here. And so I was like, I don't know what they're gonna think of me with like my purple hair. And I'm walking in and I'm like, what's up? You know, my big earrings and we just sat down and immediately we're like chit chatting, just like homies. And I was like, I'm gonna work here. And I walked into the lobby. There were 4 other people waiting to be interviewed, and I was like, if you guys want to go home, this is where I want to work because I want to work with this dude and I think that this is going to be like a cool fit. And, you know, I was there for years. So it's kind of like that. It's interesting. I do remember being trained is probably not the right word. Like when I was in high school and stuff, when they would do like mock interviews, like you'd go in and they'd have you dress up and like they'd try and teach you how to do that kind of stuff. And I remember it was always just like the guy at the desk that looked over you and he was like, okay, I have some questions for you. And you're like, I'm here to answer your questions. And it's like, it's so weird, but it's like,
Weird.
exactly what if that's the kind of experience you have while you're being interviewed, what do you think your everyday work life is going to be like? What do you think is going to happen when you have challenges or you mess up on something or all that stuff? Like if they're treating you like that from the get-go, probably what's going to
Yeah.
happen as you're an employee there. It's a really great point.
Yeah. Yeah.
um so this is a really one-off question, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, and I don't mean to, but
Okay.
you brought it up, and so I kind of wanted to ask you. So when you were saying that you worked at these jobs and you felt like, oh, okay, like this is just my job. I'm going to come here. I'm going to do it. Maybe not comfortable enough. Like you ask yourself those questions, which I think all Black women in workspaces ask. How close do I get to other people? How much do I trust these other people? How much of myself, my true self, am I allowed to show to other people? Do you think that there is, you know, some guidance that you or myself, like we could give, you know, people who are not Black to help give us that space when we're at work?
Hmm. Oh man, to provide space, so to ourselves in that space. I mean,
Or like if someone wanted to be an ally to us at work, like what do they do? You know, what's how, you know, that's one of the biggest questions that I get a lot. You know, it's like, I'm hearing you say these things, but what do I do? And I get that there's like this larger, you know, aspect of like educating yourself and advocating. But is there, you know, something that comes to mind for you where you were like, if these people at this job would have done this, that would have been really supportive to me or helpful to me?
hmm hmm Well, I mean, I think probably more immediate. I mean, I'm always thinking like really immediate in this last job because so much, like I said, happened
Yeah.
for us, for Black folks. It was just a big year for us in this last year, and I feel
Yeah.
like what was sort of lacking was, I just feel like the empathy of of people just being like acknowledging that you're there.
Mhm.
And I felt like, I think it was like feeling really isolated, that I had to carry sort of the burden of like, I'm going through something right now,
Mhm.
right? Like, I'm Black, I'm in this
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
A lot is going on in the world that impacts me right now. How do we have this conversation? You don't have to be perfect in having the conversation,
Mhm.
but like and I don't even know how you would approach it, because everybody's an individual of how they want to approach, my job. I was probably like one out of, there's four of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. How big was the
And
company?
probably about in the location about like 50 or 60 people. It wasn't that
Okay.
big. So it
But
was a
still
it was a
four
family owned
four
business.
out of 50 or 60 people. I'm not liking those
Yeah.
odds.
Right. And you just felt like you really couldn't have the conversations, and to I'm trying to figure out how to answer. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, to really feel like, I mean, I didn't get a lot of those conversations. You
Yeah.
don't, I mean, that's great if you get asked like, how can I be an ally? Blah, blah.
Right.
It's a
Just kind
really
of like
hard one to answer about
acknowledgement.
how. It's acknowledgement,
Yeah.
because I mean, because you have individuals that you work with, and then you
Yeah.
have the overall structure of the company.
Yeah.
But if your overall structure of the company is not facilitating diversity and inclusion and having conversations around things,
Yeah.
there could have been a great opportunity to have conversation about what happened in this last year,
Yeah.
you know? And if you're not, then individuals are not really thinking about that either. And it's really
Yeah.
hard to engage those kind of conversations. And I think it's difficult on both sides. I think people are feeling a lot of pressure. Like, how do I do? What do I do? Well, there's no magic like quick fix. There's no
Right.
like guidebook about how I should interact with you as a Black person.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know what I mean? It's just like, don't, I know it's a hard conversation, but just be present. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just like, hey, how are you doing? But it's a lot to ask, because I think everybody's trying to evolve through this, and I,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's some way in which we can do for ourselves and how to navigate that space. I think like we just have to be watchful about who we I think I've learned to like know how to have certain conversations
Yes.
and how I can relate to certain people in different ways. You have to learn how to sort of like have ways in which you may interact with one person this way, you may interact with one person. You can test and see how far you can go with
Yeah.
people,
Hmm.
and I think that, there is no quick fix to it all. It's just like you kind of figure out who you can kind of engage and push those
Right.
conversations with, and where you feel comfortable having those conversations with. Oftentimes we're like, I don't want to explain what it is to be Black to white people. And, I don't want to have that conversation, not my place to educate you and things like that. And yeah, it's very true. But then sometimes you can have those conversations, right? It
Yeah.
really just depends. It's a really like situational thing that you have to sort of engage in the workplace with.
Yeah.
It's just
Especially in the
keeping your
workplace.
eyes and being very aware. Yeah, you just have to be very aware. But like I didn't feel safe in my space.
Yeah.
And, I befriended, some of the Black folks I wasn't really that close to. You and even in the space, when there's four of you, you still can feel like you're the only one,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
I think that that's a big misconception too, is that like that all Black people in one room get along. And it's like, no, like we may not
No,
like each other either, just as much as
yeah,
anybody else. These are really good
yeah, no,
points. These are really good
yeah,
points.
no. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that it's really interesting. Like work dynamic, I think it gets really interesting in itself when you're talking about race, and especially with everything that's happened over the last year.
Mm,
I really like this point of acknowledgement, right? Like I don't need you to find a solution to Black Lives Matter. Like I don't need you to find a solution, but it's okay to acknowledge that it's something that's happening, and it's something that's happening to my people or people that I associate with.
right,
On a more personal level compared to like a company wide level, I think that it's what I felt personally when everything was happening was that the white people I knew were like, how do I fix this right now? And I'm like, it's so much bigger than that, you know? Or like,
right,
how can I
right.
help you right now? What do you need right now? And I'm like, I need everybody to back the fuck up a little bit. Like it was just a lot. But then it was like, like they felt that asking what they could do at that heightened time of attention was enough.
Right,
And so now that I'm like, okay, well, it's not over. Like we still have things to do. And they're like, well, I don't know what to
right,
do. And it's like, I get that there's a bit of confusion and there's a bit of guilt that's going on, right? Like I want to do something, but it seems like such a big problem that I don't even know how to put a dent in it. And I really,
right,
really like your suggestion of even acknowledging that it's a thing that's happening, that it's a thing that's affecting people that are close to me that I'm associated with, that like, I kind of got to a point last year where like I got so fucking sick and tired of hearing, well, I'm just going to continue educating myself. Like, what does that mean? It's like such a
right.
like hands off answer. And I was like, so how many Black authors did you read this month? And how many do you have to plan to read next month? And the like, what's the education that you're doing? Did you see a documentary this month? How about next month? Like, did you talk to your friends? Did you go to book club? Like, what is the education part of it? And then on top of that, that education turns into action. You don't learn how to
Mhm.
like crochet a blanket and then never make a fucking blanket, right? Like all of that
Right,
information needs to go somewhere in your community, in your affiliations, even when the conversations are hard or tough. Or, like you said, even if you think you're going to fuck it up, try it and be gentle
right.
about it and give yourself room to make mistakes. And then I think us as
Mhm.
Black people on the other end need to be a little bit more open to white people making mistakes and learning how to respond to them in kind. Not like, oh,
Yeah,
it's okay, we all make mistakes, but being learned how to say, like,
right,
I see that you're trying. Don't say that again.
right,
Like, here are these things that you can do, and
right,
helping to be a part of the solution by not jumping down white people's throats when they're trying, right? They have to be able to
mhm,
try and fuck it up. And we have to be able to say, good try this instead.
right,
Or this is a better way,
right,
I like that.
right. Yeah,
So, okay, you
yeah.
left that job and what are you doing now? What was your pivot and how are you feeling about it?
Well, yeah. So it was okay. So I got laid off from that job. The company got bought out and all that, and who knows the real reason, whatever. But anyways, it was a good universal thing that happened. Let's just
Yeah,
put it that way.
good.
Um, it was that time. I was feeling it. It was like, but it was that thing where it was like, I don't know if I can leave. I gotta pay bills. It's secure.
Mhm.
But I could feel myself just feeling like I was getting like more angry, more short, just more like "Ugh, I can't handle this anymore." And so then it came. It was like
Mhm.
we can't keep it. And I was like freaking out at first, and then I was like, okay, I was like walks in the park. get up at this time, trying to figure it out. And like initially I was like, what I do all the time and why I've been in this constant cycle of like sort of these dead end jobs. And they're all good experiences, all experience, but all these cycles is because I'm like, jump from one to the next. It's just like, okay, here we get something.
Yeah.
And this time I just took a break. And I think with the pandemic, honestly, outside of like all the deaths,
Yeah.
I'm sick of the pandemic, outside of all that, my wife and I was saying like, this has been the best thing for us, for myself, for her. I feel like it put a pause, it put some time to like, to really like kind of settle into self and kind of like really switch and think about things. I feel like it was like the leverage that was needed to be like, the universe was like, okay, this is it. Like you're pushed out. This is your moment to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And I still struggle for a bit. I still struggle like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I was really starting to feel that like, I don't know if I can do this, like going back to a job again.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I'm kind of that weird person where I was like, also really scared and really nervous about like leaping out on my own.
Yes.
And like, I was like, I never want to be an entrepreneur. I can't see working for myself and all the things. So initially I went through all these changes of what I was going to do. I was like, I'm going to do virtual system. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I just, nothing was really clicking. And then it's real quick. I don't want to talk about forever, but I had this artwork that I had since like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember it.
Made it and you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
I had it back then. I tried to do like earrings with it and all this, and it was so much labor, and I just really put it aside. Mm-hmm. And then recently I've been getting into a lot of teaching myself a lot of tech and a lot of like design and things like that. And I was like, I'm going to kind of, let's see what happens if I kind of redo them digitally. I'm going to redesign them. And I've been sharing over a period of time, just stuff that I've been learning and doing. So I just put it out on social media. And then I got response. And then I got a lot of like, this would be great on a backpack. This would be great on a tote. This would be great on a cup. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I was like, it's like one of those things when I did it, I was like, oh shit. I was
what
like,
did I just do?
I was just posting it because I was just sharing, but yep. And then, but my mind, I started really thinking about it. So initially what I started was that I was just like, okay, cool. Because I was already building a website for something completely different. I was going to be doing like virtual assisting and offering like logo design and learning, doing all this other stuff. Yeah. But I was putting my artwork on there, like a side thing. Like you can go to this website and, I'm going to put it on some products. People were like, you could do that. I'm like, well, let me look into that. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, but it'll be a side thing. And then I had a conversation with a friend about her business because I was trying to get a lot of advice. And we were talking and she was asking me a lot of questions because she has her own business and she's asked me about what I want to do and all this. And then we started talking about the art and she looks at it and she was like, and then at one point she says, I want you to like, I know that you want to do all these things. You can still do all these things, but like, don't push aside the creative part.
Yes.
Like, don't push aside this part. I know that you're kind of like, oh, I'll do this on the side. But when I look at this work, I see you. Like, this is you. And as she kept talking, I was like, I started to feel myself get really excited. I started to feel myself start to get really settled into the idea. And my mind started going. And I started to feel energetically comfortable with the idea of like, maybe I really should switch.
Yeah.
And so I went from all these, this is me though. That's my brain. I'm all over the place. I went from that, and I was like, this is it. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my artwork. But initially when I started, I was just like, okay, I was like, I'm going to put on some products. There's sites where you can just kind of put it on the site and then like people can go there and purchase it. Yeah. But I was like, it wasn't for me. I was like, I want to build a whole like Shopify site, a whole experience where people come from. So I dove in. I was just like, I'm going to build this whole thing. And before you knew it, it went from sort of like, I want to do this because people ask me like, I want to give this. That's great. This is because I never knew before how to really give my art in that way. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. And now I was like, wait a minute. I'm getting sales tax permits and got to get my business license and like, you know what I mean? I was like, wait, am I calling myself a solopreneur right now? Wait, what is going
Yes.
on right now? And so that is where I am. I'm sorry, I tell long roundabout stories, but the
I love
whole
it.
journey of this has been that like, here I am. I have not launched it yet, but She Got Designs is what I've created. I have an online store that I'm going to be opening up soon, and taking my artwork that I've made digitally. That's my thing right now, and put it on some products. And
Love it.
yeah, I'm gonna see where it goes. It's I haven't really like I haven't made this major business plan of like, oh, this is the way it's gonna be. It's just like organic right now.
Yeah.
Like,
I
this is a big
love
step
it.
for me. It's a big step. So the big step is that I'm doing it is like, and I'm just kind of letting it take its, I'm going to put in the word, but it's like, I want to let it take its course. I don't want to put myself
Yeah.
back in the situation that I left, right?
Yeah.
It's something that I enjoy. I want to
Mhm.
do this for a reason because because I feel great about it. And I want to keep that purity and that balance of like it being enjoyable, but,
Yes.
also giving back to myself what's of value, at the
Yes.
same time.
I'm so excited for you, and it's really interesting to hear you talk about, your office jobs, and you were like, yeah, like these jobs, what was that? And then I'm like, tell me about yours, and you're like, okay, so I like took this artwork that I made and it has this designs, and I put it on things, and I was like, people love it. Like you just lit up while you were talking about all of it, and it's it's so beautiful to see because I do feel like that is like kind of like Black women in employment. They're like, I get up, I go to work, I do this thing, I put on my armor, I try not to offend anyone, I try to keep my job for another week, and then I get let
Yeah,
go, and it's like, cool, I just wasted that time, or all these things, and then you watch them do things that they are so passionate about, that they feel like they can't make money from, that they feel like they can't make
right.
into employment, and then they get shoved back into those holes where they're just like, okay, I'll just be do this over here. And I'm really proud of you, because I know that that leap is one that can be really scary to take, and it can be with the uncertainty, right? Like, yes, we get put into these boxes, but we also know if we like keep our mouth shut and put our armor on, we get a paycheck at the end. And one of
Mhm.
my favorite things that I learned really early on in owning my own business was one of the coaches that I followed. She said, don't let making 30,000 a year keep you making from 30,000 a month. And I was like, in my head, I was like, that's so crazy, right? But when you have your
Yeah,
own enterprise and you're selling your own thing and you learn the avenues of marketing and creation, that is a possibility for you.
right,
So I think for us, we get scared into thinking that can't be me. 30,000 a month is
right.
not something that I could do. So I'm just going to stay safe in this box and inside this armor. But when you start watching Black women follow their passions, follow their dreams, get the support that they need in terms of marketing and advertising and collaboration, that those things do happen. And it's really exciting to be watching you take off on your own. I know that like I've talked to you for years about your jobs and your experiences, and watching you light up over your new venture makes my heart sing, and I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, this has
Yes.
been a really beautiful chat. I am so grateful that you came on to talk to me about this. I'm super excited about your future endeavors. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close? I am going to share She Got Designs. I shared it yesterday, but I will keep people posted as the shop is opening up. But is there anything else you want to share?
No, in the end of it, I know part of the title was just about pivoting in your later years, and I just wanted to just share that it's never too late, and in that, it's just like I talk to a lot of people that we do have that fear, and I think we don't hear it enough sometimes. We do hear a lot of successes, which are great, but we don't often hear the struggles, and like it can be really hard, when you struggle for a long time. And I'm 46, going on 47 this year, and it's easy to look back and be like, what has happened, and
Mhm.
feel disappointed, about where your life has been, and maybe we're still in it right now. And I guess I just want to end with like an encouragement.
Yeah.
You know, for any, this can be to anybody, but especially for those of us that are like, for me, like in our late 40s right now, and we're still trying to figure it out. We don't hear it enough, but like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, sit in that, embrace that, you know, work through that. That it's okay, that you'll find your way at some point. And you know, it isn't too late. I don't want to sound cliche. It's just like, because I didn't think that I would sit here to have anything to say, to be honest, right? I mean, before when you had me on here, I was like, I don't know if I still want to be on, because I don't know if I have anything to offer. I mean, you know, it's like we're always gonna have these conversations, but no, it's never too late to really pivot. It's never, you know, and it's okay to be in this space of still trying to figure it out.
Yes.
You know, and that is part of the journey. It's always going to be a part of the work, you know, but it's there, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just waiting for an opportunity. And like my mom said, I was like, I wish I would have done this before. She's like, well, maybe that just wasn't the time. And a
Yeah.
lot of decisions that we've made in our past, we made the best decisions that we made because those were the type of people we were then.
Yes.
We, you know, we couldn't have done or made any more decisions differently than what we did, because that was where our minds were. That's who we were. Right. And so that's very different than where we are going and where we are now. And so we have to be forgiving and graceful to ourselves,
Yes.
and be graceful and forgive, and be graceful and give ourselves space now in ourselves
Yeah.
to continue. There is no one else's time but your time.
Yeah.
Everybody else can do whatever. I'm a
Right.
culprit of like looking at everybody else, and it's like, I'm responsible for me. I'm only doing me, and I have my own particular timing, and there is no other timing other than the path that I'm on. And so I just want to like say that, you know, those, you know, people who may be listening, you know, you're not alone. You know, you can do it.
Thank you for that. And I think that there's
Thank-
something to, you know, not beating our past selves up right now. Like, you don't need to beat your past self up. You don't need to beat your present self up, and know that, like, by sitting in that kind of energy, you're also beating your future self up a little bit. So what can you do for
Right.
yourself right now that will set your future self up to be in a place where they feel supported and validated and fulfilled in the work that they're doing? I agree with you. Every part of our past has led us into where we are now, and it's so nice to look at our past experiences and be like, okay, thank you, and now we are here
Right.
and looking towards the future. Right, we still got a lot of lives to live. Doesn't matter how old you are, you still got
Exactly.
life to live. Go live it the way you want, with everything.
Right.
Thank you so
Right.
much for coming on and having this conversation, Angela. This has been such a bright point for my week, and I know that this has been probably a very inspirational conversation for a lot of other women. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just want to thank everybody that hopped on the Facebook Live. Courtney, thank you so much for watching and for sharing your comment with you. Courtney, who was on last episode, said that she felt a lot of what we were saying about the armor and keeping clothes, not being able to say things. So I appreciate your feedback on that, and for joining in. Everybody, we will be back from the first week of March. I will be interviewing Imani Williams, who is the owner of Birth in Black, which is a birth and postpartum care service specializing in doula services for Black women. Black women have the highest mortality rate in hospitals, especially around birth. And she is on a mission to help lower the ever rising stats of women who are dying and having severe after effects in their labor. So I hope that y'all can join us on March 3rd. Again, thank you so much, Angela, and we'll see y'all later.